He built an empire on control, until the day his mind forgot everything except the voice of a woman he'd never truly met. The fluorescent lights hummed their sterile song in room 14 of St. Catherine's private wing. Outside, the city pulsed with ambition and noise. Inside, time had stopped 6 months ago. Adrien Hale, billionaire, CEO, untouchable architect of corporate kingdoms, lay perfectly still. His chest rose and fell with mechanical precision. Monitors beeped their lonely rhythm. The machines kept him alive, but no one kept him company, except her. Elena Murray sat in the worn chair beside his bed, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from a double shift. She wasn't assigned to him tonight. She never was, officially, but she came anyway. She always did. "You know what I realized today?" she whispered, her voice soft in the darkness. "You've been here longer than most relationships last. 6 months, Adrien. People get married and divorced in less time." She smiled sadly, brushing a strand of dark hair from her tired face. "I wonder if you can hear me. The doctors say maybe, maybe not. But I think you're in there. Somewhere." Her fingers adjusted the blanket over his chest, a gesture so automatic now, so tender it had become ritual. This isn't just another love story. It's about the invisible moments that change everything. If you believe some connections transcend consciousness itself, hit like and subscribe, because what happens next will make you believe in something deeper than memory. Elena opened the book in her lap, a dog-eared copy of poetry she'd brought from home. Not medical journals, not therapy scripts, just beauty. She believed he deserved beauty. "Okay, where were we?" She found her place. "Ah, Neruda. You'd probably hate this if you were awake. Your assistant told me you only read financial reports." She paused. "But I think you're more than that. I think maybe you forgot how to be more than that." Her voice filled the room. "I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees." The machines beeped, the city hummed, and in the space between words, something impossible lingered. The strange intimacy of one-sided conversations that span months. "I told my daughter about you today," Elena continued, closing the book. "She's 7. She asked if you're my friend. I said yes. Is that weird, being friends with someone who's never said a word to you?" She laughed quietly, the sound almost breaking. "Your world came looking for you once, in the beginning. Lawyers, board members, a woman in a white suit who wouldn't look at you. She signed papers and left. No one's visited since." Eleanor's eyes glistened. "I don't understand that. How does someone build so much and end up so alone?" She stood, checking his vitals with practiced efficiency, heart rate steady, oxygen good, brain activity minimal but present. The doctors called it persistent vegetative state. Elena called it waiting. "You're stronger today," she murmured, adjusting the IV. "I can feel it, like you're closer to the surface." Her hand rested briefly on his, a touch that lasted only seconds but carried months of accumulated tenderness. "Good night, Adrien. I'll see you tomorrow." She gathered her things, turned toward the door, and froze. Behind her a sound, small, fragile, a breath that wasn't mechanical. Eleanor's heart stopped. She turned slowly, afraid to hope, terrified not to. Adrien Hale's fingers twitched, then his eyes, those eyes the business world had feared, that had signed deals worth billions, that hadn't seen light in half a year, opened, confused, unfocused, searching, and finding her. "Eleanor," he whispered. The book fell from her hands. His voice was raw, barely audible, but certain. Absolutely certain. "You're Elena." The machines erupted in frantic beeping. She should run for the doctor, hit the call button, follow protocol, but she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "How do you—" Her voice cracked. "How do you know my name?" His eyes held hers with an intensity that defied his weakened state. "I know everything," Adrien breathed, each word an effort. "The poetry, your daughter, the cherry trees. I heard it all." His hand reached weakly toward her. "I heard you." Elena's knees buckled. She caught herself on the bed rail. That's not possible. You've been in the dark," he finished, his gaze never leaving her face. "But you were the light. You were the only thing that was real." Footsteps thundered in the hallway. The monitors had alerted the night staff. In seconds, the room would flood with doctors, questions, chaos. But in this moment, this impossible, fractured, beautiful moment, Adrien Hale looked at the woman who'd sat with him through 6 months of silence and said the words that would shatter everything. "Don't leave me. Please. You're all I remember." The door burst open. White coats swarmed. Elena was pulled back, her hand slipping from the rail as medical staff surrounded the bed. Over their shoulders, through the chaos, Adrien's eyes found hers one last time. Desperate, pleading, lost. And Elena realized with crushing certainty she'd spent 6 months talking to a stranger's unconscious mind. Now that stranger was awake, and she was the only person in his entire world. The hospital conference room smelled of burnt coffee and fluorescent anxiety. Elena sat across from Dr. Reeves, her hands folded tightly in her lap, still trembling from 3 hours ago. Through the window, dawn was breaking over the city, pale and uncertain, like everything else. "Selective amnesia with paradoxical retention," Dr. Reeves said, sliding a chart across the table. "Extremely rare. He's lost nearly everything, his identity, his past, his empire, but somehow he's retained fragments of auditory memory, specifically your voice." Elena stared at the medical terminology, the brain scans, the impossible data. "I don't understand. I was just talking to him for 6 months." The doctor removed his glasses, rubbing tired eyes. "Most people stop after a week. Family, friends, they visit once, maybe twice, then life continues. But you came every night, you read to him, spoke to him, created a neural pathway when his brain had nothing else to hold on to. So I caused this. You saved him." Dr. Reeves leaned forward. His brain was shutting down. "Your voice became an anchor, a reason to surface. You didn't cause his amnesia, the accident did. But you're the reason he fought back to consciousness." Elena's chest tightened. "What happens now?" "Now." The doctor's expression grew complicated. "Now we have a man with no memory of being Adrien Hale, billionaire, CEO, one of the most powerful men in the country. He doesn't remember his company, his wealth, his past relationships." He paused meaningfully. "But he remembers poetry about cherry trees, your daughter's name, the sound of your laugh." "I never laughed in front of him." "He says you did, once, when you dropped your coffee and cursed in Portuguese." Elena's breath caught. She had done that 2 months ago. She'd thought he was too deep in the coma to register anything. "What does he think I am to him?" she asked quietly. Dr. Reeves closed the folder. "He thinks you're his world." They let her see him after the morning evaluations. Adrien sat upright in the bed now, looking stronger, but somehow more fragile. They'd shaved him, cleaned him up. Without the months of unconscious stillness, he looked younger, uncertain, human. His eyes found her the instant she entered. Elena. Her name in his voice still felt like a door opening in her chest. "Hi." She stayed near the entrance, suddenly awkward. For 6 months, she'd had all the power, the one who spoke while he listened. Now his gaze held her accountable for every word she'd ever said. "They told me I've been asleep for half a year." His voice was steadier now, but careful, testing. "They told me I'm someone important, that I built something, but I don't." He shook his head, frustrated. "I don't remember any of it." Elena moved closer, instinct overriding uncertainty. "What do you remember?" "You." Simple. Devastating. Your voice in the dark. The way you said my name like I was still a person, not just a body. The stories you told about your daughter, Sophia, right? "Yes." Eleanor's throat tightened. "You said she asked if I was your friend." Adrien's eyes held hers. "Am I? Is that what we are?" The question hung in the sterile air between them. Elena should say no, should explain, should establish the professional boundary that had dissolved somewhere in 6 months of one-sided intimacy. Instead, she said, "I don't know what we are." Something flickered in his expression. Relief, maybe, that she was as lost as he was. "They said people are coming," Adrien continued. "Lawyers, business partners, a woman named Victoria who was..." He struggled with the word. "Important to me, apparently." Elena's stomach dropped. She'd seen Victoria once, the woman in the white suit, perfect, cold, powerful. "They say she's been handling my affairs, that we were..." Adrien's jaw tightened. "But I don't feel anything when they say her name. No recognition, nothing." His eyes found Elena's again. "But when you walk in the room, I can breathe." "Adrien? Is that even my name?" He laughed bitterly. "It sounds like someone else's, but when you say it, it feels real." Elena sat in the chair beside his bed, the same chair she'd occupied for 180 nights, but everything was different now. "You're Adrien Hale," she said gently. "You built Hale Industries from nothing. You're brilliant, driven. According to Forbes, you're one of the richest men under 40 in the world." He stared at her. "That sounds terrible." Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. "Why?" "Because it sounds lonely." His hand moved slightly on the blanket, not quite reaching for hers but wanting to. "Was I? Lonely?" Elena thought of the empty room, the single visitor who'd signed papers and left, the empire with no one to care if its king ever woke up. "I think," she said carefully, "you were very alone." Adrien was quiet for a long moment. "And you sat with me anyway." "It's my job." "No." His voice was firm now, surprising them both. "I've met the other nurses. I've seen the shift schedules. You weren't assigned to me." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense despite his weakened state. "You chose me. Why?" Eleanor's defenses cracked. "Because everyone deserves to be seen," she whispered. "Even in the dark. Especially in the dark." The machines beeped softly. Outside, the city was waking up. Coffee carts and taxi horns and a million people rushing toward things that mattered. Inside room 14, 2 people sat in the strange territory between strangers and something far more dangerous. They want to move me, Adrien said quietly, to some private facility, somewhere I can relearn how to be whoever I was. That's good. You'll heal better there. Will you come? Elena's heart cracked. Adrien, I'm a nurse. I have other patients, a daughter, a life that doesn't... I know. He cut her off gently. I know I have no right to ask. But you're the only thing that makes sense, the only memory that feels like mine. His voice dropped. Please don't let me disappear into a world I don't remember. Not yet. Before Elena could answer, the door opened. A woman entered, tall, impeccable, ice blonde hair and a perfectly tailored suit that cost more than Elena's monthly rent. Victoria. Her eyes swept the room, landed on Adrien with something between relief and calculation, then shifted to Elena with unmistakable assessment. Adrien. Her voice was smooth, controlled. Thank God. We've been so worried. Adrien stared at her with polite blankness. I'm sorry. They said you're someone I know? Something flickered in Victoria's perfect composure. She recovered instantly. Someone you know? She laughed. Cultured, musical, fake. Darling, we've been together for 3 years. I'm Victoria, your fiance. The word landed like a blade. Eleanor stood abruptly. I should go. Let you... No. Adrien's hand shot out, catching her wrist, not possessive, desperate. Stay, please. Victoria's eyes narrowed fractionally. I'm sorry, she said, her tone sharpening. And you are. Eleanor gently pulled her wrist free, her heart hammering. I'm Elena. I'm his nurse. I see. Victoria's smile was ice. Well, thank you for your service, but Adrien's care will be private from here. I'm sure you understand. The dismissal was absolute, professional, brutal. Eleanor looked at Adrien, his eyes pleading, confused, caught between a past he couldn't remember and a present that terrified him. She did what she'd been trained to do. Of course, Eleanor said quietly. I hope you recover well, Mr. Hale. She turned toward the door. Elena, but she was already gone. In the hallway, she pressed her back against the wall, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Through the window in the door, she could see Victoria sitting in the chair, Eleanor's chair, taking Adrien's hand with practiced grace, and Adrien, staring at the door where Eleanor had disappeared, as if she'd taken all the light with her. 3 weeks passed like a wound that wouldn't close. Elena returned to her regular shifts, pediatrics, where children's laughter was supposed to remind her why she chose nursing. But at night, lying in her small apartment with Sophia asleep in the next room, she still heard his voice. You're all I remember. She'd done the right thing, the professional thing. Adrien Hale belonged to a world of penthouses and board meetings and beautiful fiancés who knew how to navigate his empire. She was just the nurse who talked to him in the dark. It should have been easy to forget. It wasn't. Mama? Sophia's voice cut through her thoughts. Her daughter stood in the kitchen doorway, backpack ready for school, studying her with 7-year-old intensity. You're sad about the sleeping prince. Elena's hands stilled on the coffee pot. What? The man from the hospital, the one you told stories to. Sophia came closer, her small face serious. He woke up, right? That's supposed to be the happy ending. It's complicated, meu amor. Because he has another princess? Elena's heart twisted. She'd never told Sophia about Victoria. but children understood more than adults gave them credit for. Something like that. Sophia considered this with the gravity of childhood wisdom. But you were the one who stayed with him when he was sleeping. That should count for something. It should, Elena thought, but it doesn't. She kissed her daughter's forehead. Come on, you'll be late for school. That afternoon, Elena was restocking supplies in the pediatric wing when her supervisor found her. Maurice, someone's asking for you. Says it's urgent. Elena's stomach dropped. Who? Didn't leave a name, just said to meet him in the chapel. The hospital chapel was small, quiet, a space between worlds where families prayed for miracles. Elena pushed open the door, expecting, she didn't know what. Adrien stood by the window. He looked different, stronger. They dressed him in expensive clothes that fit perfectly, dark slacks, a crisp white shirt. He belonged to magazines now, not hospital beds. But when he turned, his eyes held the same desperate clarity she remembered. You're hard to find, he said. They wouldn't tell me your schedule. You shouldn't be here, you should be… Where? The penthouse they say is mine? With the woman who looks at me like I'm a broken investment? Adrien stepped closer. I left. Elena's breath caught. What? The facility. The recovery program. Victoria's carefully managed reintroduction to my old life. He laughed bitterly. I lasted 3 days. Every morning I woke up in that apartment, surrounded by things I supposedly chose, and felt like I was suffocating. Adrien, you need professional help, therapy, time to… I need the truth. His voice was quiet but immovable. For 6 months, you talked to me. You told me about your life, your daughter, the neighborhood where you live, somewhere with a bakery that burns the bread and a park where Sophia feeds pigeons every Sunday. He moved closer still. You made that world sound real. Like it mattered, more real than anything they're trying to give me now. That's just because you don't remember. So help me remember what matters. Eleanor stared at him. I don't understand. Show me. Adrien's eyes held hers with startling vulnerability. Your world, the one you told me about. Let me see if that feels more real than the empire I supposedly built. That's insane. You can't just… I have a car waiting. Private security that Victoria insisted on. Ironic since I'm using them to escape her oversight. A ghost of a smile. I'm told I'm very good at hostile takeovers. Consider this one. Elena should refuse, should call Dr. Reeves, should do anything except what every broken, hopeful part of her wanted to do. One afternoon, she heard herself say, then you go back to your real life. Deal. The neighborhood where Elena lived was 40 minutes from the hospital's gleaming tower. A different universe entirely. Adrien sat in the back of the town car, watching through tinted windows as luxury gave way to authenticity. Modest buildings with laundry hanging from balconies, corner stores with hand-painted signs, children playing soccer in the street. This is where you live, he asked, but there was no judgment in his voice, only curiosity. This is home, Elena pointed. That's Sophia's school. The bakery I mentioned. Senor Costa does burn the bread, but his pastel de nata is perfect. And that park is where she feeds the pigeons. Their eyes met. The driver stopped. Elena led Adrien through her world like a translator between languages, past the neighbors who greeted her by name, past the community garden where Mrs. Chen grew vegetables for everyone, past the sounds of music and argument and life happening loudly, messily, beautifully. Her apartment was on the third floor, small, worn, but the afternoon light through the windows turned everything golden. "This is it," Elena said, suddenly self-conscious. The entire space could fit in one room of his penthouse. "It's not... It's perfect," Adrien said quietly. He moved through the space like a man discovering water in a desert. His fingers traced the photos on the wall: Eleanor and Sophia at the beach, at Christmas, at a birthday party with a homemade cake. A child's drawings held by magnets on the refrigerator, books stacked everywhere. "You read to me from these," he said, touching a volume of poetry. "Yes." "Why?" Eleanor leaned against the kitchen counter. "Because I thought maybe you'd spent too much time with numbers, with transactions and deals and coldness. I thought maybe you'd forgotten what beauty sounded like." Adrien turned to face her. "What was I like before? They won't tell me the truth. They just show me achievements. Buildings with my name, accounts I can't fathom. But who was I to people?" Elena hesitated. "Tell me," he pressed. "Please, you're the only one who has no reason to lie." "You were," she chose her words carefully, "brilliant, powerful, feared, mostly, respected always, but not," she trailed off, "not loved." It wasn't a question. "I don't think you let people close enough to love you," Elena said gently. "I think you built walls so high that even you forgot how to climb down." Adrien absorbed this. And Victoria? She's appropriate, strategic, everything a man like you would choose. "Choose," he repeated. "But did I love her? I don't know. I only saw her once." "But you know," Adrien insisted. "You saw how she looked at me, how I must have looked at her before." He stepped closer. "Tell me." Eleanor met his eyes. "She looked at you like you were her greatest achievement, not her greatest love." The words hung between them, honest and damning. "And you?" Adrien's voice dropped. "How did you look at me?" Elena's defenses crumbled. "Like you were human," she whispered. "Like you deserved to be seen that way, even when you couldn't see yourself." The apartment was very quiet. Outside, children shouted in the street. Someone's radio played samba. Life continued, indifferent to the moment breaking open between them. Adrien reached out slowly, giving her time to step back. She didn't. His hand cupped her face with a tenderness that felt like memory and discovery all at once. "I don't remember my name," he breathed. "I don't remember how to run an empire or who I was before the darkness. But I remember your voice. The way you said cherry trees like it meant something sacred. I remember feeling less alone than I've ever..." The door burst open. Sophia stood frozen in the doorway, her after-school babysitter behind her, both staring at the stranger in their living room. Adrien stepped back instantly. Elena's hand went to her chest, her heart hammering. "Maman?" Sophia's voice was small, uncertain. Elena moved quickly, kneeling to her daughter's level. "Meu amor, this is Adrien. Remember? The man I told you about." Sophia's eyes went wide. She looked at Adrien with the unfiltered wonder of childhood. "You woke up," she said. Adrien smiled, and it transformed his face into something unguarded and real. "I did." "Did you hear Maman's stories about the cherry trees?" Every word. Sophia considered this with serious intensity. Then she crossed the room and did something that stopped both adults' hearts. She took Adrien's hand. "I'm glad you're awake," she said simply. "Mama was sad when you were sleeping." Adrien looked at Elena over her daughter's head, a look of such raw emotion that Elena had to turn away. "I'm glad too," he said quietly. Sophia tugged his hand. "Do you want to see my drawings? Mama says I'm good at birds." And just like that, with the easy acceptance of children who haven't learned to build walls, Sophia led this billionaire who'd forgotten his empire to the kitchen table to show him crayon drawings of pigeons. Eleanor watched from the doorway as Adrien sat in her worn chair, listening to her daughter with complete attention, asking questions about purple pigeons and whether birds dreamed. He looked more at home in her tiny kitchen than he had in any hospital room. He looked like he finally remembered what it felt like to be human. And Elena knew, with crushing certainty, that letting him into her world was the most dangerous thing she'd ever done, because now he had a reason to want to stay. 2 months became a secret. Adrien came back, not every day, that would have been impossible, suspicious, but twice a week, then 3 times, then whenever he could slip away from the handlers trying to reconstruct his old life. He'd arrive at sunset, when the neighborhood was alive with the smell of dinner cooking and children finishing their homework. He'd sit at Elena's small table and help Sophia with her math, his billion-dollar mind finding joy in explaining fractions. He'd walk with them to the park, feeding pigeons with the unself-conscious wonder of someone discovering simple things for the first time. With Elena, he was different than the man the world described, softer, present, real. And Elena, careful, sensible Elena, who'd never taken a risk that wasn't calculated, fell so deeply in love that she forgot to protect herself. It happened in small moments, the way he remembered how she took her coffee, the sound of his laugh when Sophia told terrible jokes, the night he stayed late, helping repaint Sophia's room, and their hands touched over the paint roller and neither of them pulled away. "I should go," he'd said, but didn't move. "Yes," Elena had whispered, but stepped closer. The kiss, when it came, felt like inevitability and catastrophe all at once. "This is wrong," Elena breathed against his mouth. "Nothing has ever felt more right," Adrien answered. And for those stolen weeks, Elena let herself believe it could work, that love could be enough, that somehow this man who'd forgotten his empire might choose her small world instead. She should have known better. She should have known secrets like this don't stay hidden. It was Sophia who broke the spell. "Mama," she asked one morning, braiding her school uniform tie with careful fingers, "is Adrien going to be my pie?" Elena's hands froze on the breakfast dishes. "Mi amor, it's not. Camilla at school says her mama has a namorado. That's what Adrien is, right? Your boyfriend?" Sophia's face was hopeful, open. "I like him. He's nice, and he looks at you the way princes look at princesses in the stories." Eleanor's heart cracked open. "Baby, it's complicated. Adrien has another life. People who need him, but he comes here. He chooses us. He chooses us." The words haunted Elena all day, through her shift, through medication rounds and doctor consultations, through every moment she tried not to think about the impossible situation she'd let herself fall into. She loved a man who didn't fully exist. The Adrien she knew, gentle, present, human, was built on amnesia, on the absence of memory. But what happened when those memories returned? When he remembered the cold, brilliant man who'd built an empire and never needed anyone? When he remembered Victoria? The thought made her physically ill. That evening, Elena came home to find Adrien already there, helping Sophia with a school project about family trees. "We got stuck," Sophia explained, pointing to the paper. "I don't know what to put for pie." The silence was deafening. Adrien's eyes met Elena's across the room. An apology, a question, a shared awareness that they'd let this go too far. "Why don't you work on the decorations?" Elena said gently. "I need to talk to Adrien for a minute." Sophia nodded, disappearing into her room with crayons. Elena closed the door, turned, found Adrien standing by the window, his shoulders tense. "I'm sorry," he said before she could speak. "I didn't know she'd—" "Adrien, we need to talk about what this is." "I know what it is." He turned, his eyes fierce. "It's the only real thing in my life." "It's not real. It's a fantasy built on what? On you saving my life? On me finding the only person who sees me as human instead of an asset?" Adrien crossed to her, desperate. "Every day they show me who I was, the deals I made, the enemies I crushed, the cold, calculating machine I built myself into, and every day I come here and remember that I don't want to be that person anymore." "But that person is still you," Elena said, her voice breaking. "The memories are still there, Adrien. Buried maybe, but not gone. And when they come back, they won't change how I feel. You don't know that. You don't know who you'll be when you remember. I know who I want to be." He took her hands, his grip almost painful in its intensity. "I want to be the man who makes Sophia laugh, who helps you paint walls, who knows what cherry trees mean. I want to be worthy of how you looked at me in that hospital room, like I mattered, even when I was nothing." "You were never nothing," Elena whispered. "Then let me stay." His forehead touched hers. "Let me choose this. Let me choose you." For one perfect, impossible moment, Elena let herself imagine it. A life where love was enough. Where a billionaire could simply walk away from his empire and play house in a third-floor apartment. Then her phone rang, unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Hello? Elena Moraes?" A woman's voice, cold, professional. "This is Victoria Ashford. I think we need to meet." Eleanor's blood turned to ice. Adrien pulled back, seeing her face. "What is it?" "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. The address I'm texting you." Victoria's voice was silk over steel. "Come alone, or I go to the medical board with some very interesting information about nurse-patient boundaries." The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, her hands shaking. That was her, wasn't it? Adrien's jaw was tight. What did she want? To meet. She knows, Adrien, about us. About you coming here. So let her know, I'll tell her myself. She threatened my license. Eleanor's voice was hollow. She'll report me for inappropriate conduct, patient manipulation. I could lose everything. She's bluffing. Is she? Eleanor looked at him with sudden, terrible clarity. I talked to you for 6 months while you were unconscious. I read you poetry, told you about my life, and now you're in love with me, and you don't remember your fiance. How do you think that looks? Adrien's face went pale. You're saying you... I'm saying she has a case, a good one. Eleanor stepped back, creating space between them. I crossed a line. I know I did. I didn't mean to. Eleanor, listen to me. You should go. Her voice was breaking but firm. You should go and not come back. Not until you remember who you really are. I know who I am. No. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You know who you became in the dark, with only my voice for company. But that's not real life, Adrien. Real life is empires and responsibilities and women in white suits who know how to navigate your world. She wiped her face roughly. Real life is the fact that I'm a single mother who can't afford to lose her nursing license over a man who might wake up tomorrow and not even remember why he thought he loved me. The words hung between them like shattered glass. That won't happen, Adrien said, but his voice wavered. You don't know that. So you want me to just, what? Go back to Victoria? Pretend this never happened? I want you to get proper help, real therapy, memory recovery. I want you to find out who you are without my voice in your head telling you who to be. Elena's chest ached, and if that person still wants this, still wants Sophia's terrible jokes and burned bread and a life that's small and ordinary, then maybe what? Maybe it will be real. Adrien stared at her, raw and desperate. It's already real. Then it will still be real when you remember. Elena moved to the door, opening it, a gentle but absolute dismissal. But right now you're not making a choice. You're clinging to the only anchor you have, and I can't be that for you, not if it costs me everything. Elena, please go. He stood there, torn between arguing and understanding. Finally, with visible effort, he walked to the door. He paused in the threshold. I'll remember, he said quietly. I'll remember everything, and I'll come back. Maybe you will, Elena whispered. Or maybe you'll remember why you never needed anyone before. She closed the door before he could respond. Inside, she pressed her back against the wood and slid to the floor, her body shaking with silent sobs. In her room, Sophia's small voice called out, Mama? Did Adrien leave? Yes, meu amor. Is he coming back? Elena closed her eyes, tears streaming. I don't know, baby, I don't know. The next afternoon, Elena walked into the restaurant Victoria had chosen, all glass and modern art and prices that made her monthly rent look like pocket change. Victoria sat at a corner table, perfect and deadly. Sit, she said. Not an invitation, a command. Eleanor sat. Victoria slid a folder across the table. Inside, you'll find documentation of every visit Adrien made to your apartment. Photographs, timestamps, a very detailed account of how a nurse manipulated a vulnerable patient during his recovery. Elena's stomach turned. It doesn't matter what you did or didn't do. Victoria's smile was ice. It matters what it looks like. And it looks like you took advantage of a man with severe amnesia to insert yourself into his life. He came to me. I tried to maintain boundaries. Did you? Did you maintain boundaries when you let him into your home around your daughter? When you let him believe he belonged in your world instead of his own? Victoria leaned forward. You created a fantasy for a man who couldn't tell the difference between compassion and love. That's not romance, Miss Moraes. That's manipulation. I love him. The words escaped before Elena could stop them. Victoria's expression didn't change. I'm sure you do. And I'm sure he believes he loves you. But the Adrien you love doesn't exist. He's a ghost. A fractured piece of the real man. She opened the folder, revealing pages of medical jargon, legal terminology, photographs of Adrien entering Elena's building. The real Adrien Hale is coming back. His memories are returning. And when they do, he'll remember who he was before you, and who I am to him. You mean what you are to him? Elena said quietly. An asset. A partnership. I mean, Victoria said coldly, that I understand him. His world, his needs, his ambitions. Can you say the same? Can you navigate board meetings, fundraisers? the pressure of running a billion-dollar empire. She closed the folder. Or will you just read him poetry and hope that's enough? Elena said nothing, because Victoria was right about all of it. Here's what's going to happen, Victoria continued. You're going to stay away from Adrien completely. No calls, no visits, no contact whatsoever. You're going to let him recover properly with professionals who understand his condition. And in return, I won't destroy your career. And if I refuse, then I go to the medical board, to the hospital administration, to every news outlet that would love a story about a nurse who seduced a vulnerable billionaire. Victoria's eyes were merciless. You'll never work in healthcare again. And your daughter will grow up knowing her mother lost everything for a man who didn't even remember his own name. The restaurant blurred. Eleanor's hands were steady on the table, but inside, she was breaking apart. He deserves to choose, she said. He will choose. When he's whole. When he remembers. Victoria stood, smoothing her perfect suit. If you really love him, you'll let him find out who he is without you. And if he comes back to you after that, if he chooses your tiny apartment over everything he built, then I'll know it's real. She left cash on the table, far too much, and walked away. Elena sat alone in the expensive restaurant, surrounded by the quiet murmur of people whose worlds had never collided with hers. She thought about Adrien's face when he looked at Sophia, about the way he'd kissed her like she was oxygen, about the impossible choice between protecting herself and believing in a love that might not survive memory, and she realized that sometimes loving someone means letting them go, even when it destroys you. 6 weeks of silence felt like drowning in slow motion. Elena kept her promise. No calls, no messages. She deleted his number, blocked the unknown ones that kept appearing. She took different routes home, afraid she'd see him waiting. She told Sophia that Adrien had to go back to his real life, and watched her daughter's face crumble with a confusion Elena felt in her bones. At night, she lay awake, wondering if he was remembering, if Victoria was right. If the man she loved was disappearing, piece by piece, replaced by someone who'd never needed her at all, she had no way of knowing that Adrien was breaking apart too. The memory came back in fragments, violent, disorienting. Adrien woke one morning in the penthouse and suddenly knew the apartment. Not from photographs or descriptions, but from lived experience. He remembered choosing the furniture, remembered the view, remembered standing at this exact window, feeling nothing. Dr. Reeves called it breakthrough, progress. Adrien called it hell. Because with each memory that returned, he felt pieces of himself hardening, the cold logic, the strategic thinking, the ability to see people as assets, relationships as transactions. He remembered business deals, hostile takeovers, the rush of victory that felt like ice in his veins. He remembered his father's voice. Sentiment is weakness, control is power. He remembered becoming exactly that. But he also remembered Elena, and those memories felt different, warm, where everything else was cold, real, where everything else felt like performance. You're doing remarkably well, Doctor, Reeves said during their session. Most patients struggle to integrate old memories with new experiences, but you seem to be reconciling both versions of yourself. Am I? Adrien stared out at the city. Or am I just remembering why I built walls in the first place? What do you mean? I remember my mother leaving. I was 8. She said my father's world was too cold, too empty, that she couldn't breathe in it. Adrien's jaw tightened. I remember deciding I'd never let anyone have that power over me again, never need anyone enough to break when they left. And now I understand why. His voice was hollow. Because needing someone hurts like this. He'd tried to see Elena. 3 times, he'd gone to the hospital. Each time her supervisor said she was unavailable, transferred, on leave. The excuses changed, but the message was clear. Victoria had made good on her threat. You need to let her go, Victoria said one evening, finding him on the terrace. She'd moved back into the penthouse, resuming her role with quiet efficiency. Whoever she was to you, that chapter is closed. She wasn't a chapter. She was a fantasy, Victoria interrupted gently, almost kindly. Created when you were vulnerable. You're remembering who you really are now, Adrien. The man who built an empire, who doesn't have time for small apartments and crayon drawings. Adrien looked at her, really looked, and remembered. 3 years together. Strategic partnership disguised as romance. She understood his world because she'd built her own empire beside his. They attended the same galas, spoke the same language of power and acquisition. They made sense on paper. They'd never made sense in his chest. I don't love you, he said quietly. I don't think I ever did. Not the way I should have. Victoria's expression didn't change. Love is overrated. We have something better, mutual respect, shared ambition, a partnership that's made us both stronger. Is that enough for you? It was enough for you, she countered. Before the accident. Before her. Before her. Adrien turned back to the city. Somewhere out there, Elena was putting Sophia to bed, reading her stories, living a life that had briefly, impossibly included him. I remember proposing to you, he said. Do you know what I felt? Adrien. Relief. That I'd found someone who wouldn't ask for more than I could give, who wouldn't expect me to be... He trailed off. Human, Victoria finished. Her voice held an edge now. That's what she gave you, isn't it? Permission to be soft, weak, present, Adrien corrected. She gave me permission to be present. And look where it got you. Broken, confused, unable to function in your own world. Victoria moved beside him. I'm not the villain here, Adrien. I'm trying to save you from making a choice you'll regret. By threatening her career? By making sure I couldn't even say goodbye? Victoria's silence was answer enough. Adrien felt the old coldness rising. The part of him that knew exactly how to weaponize information, how to dismantle opponents, how to win at any cost. The part of him Elena had made him want to kill. Get out, he said quietly. Adrien. Get out of my apartment, out of my life. We're done. Victoria stared at him, genuine surprise breaking through her composure. You're choosing her, a nurse with a child and a life so small it would suffocate you in 6 months? I'm choosing myself, Adrien said, the version that remembered what it feels like to matter to someone. Not for what I've built, but for who I am. He met her eyes. You're right that love is complicated, but you're wrong that it's not worth the risk. Victoria's expression hardened. You'll regret this. Maybe. But I'll regret not trying more. She left without another word. Adrien stood alone on the terrace, the city glittering below like a kingdom he'd built and never wanted. His phone buzzed. Dr. Reeves. Adrien, we need to talk. Your latest scans show significant memory integration, but there's something else. A memory cluster that hasn't fully surfaced yet, related to the accident itself. It could be important. Adrien stared at the message. The accident. The one thing no one had fully explained. The one memory that remained locked away. He called his assistant. "Get me everything on the accident, police reports, security footage, everything." "Sir, are you sure?" "Now." The reports arrived within an hour. Adrien read them in his study, the timeline reconstructing itself. He'd been driving alone late night. A charity gala he'd left early, something he apparently did often. The road had been clear. No alcohol, no distractions. But the car had swerved, violently. Witnesses said it looked deliberate, like he'd done it on purpose. Adrien's hands trembled on the papers. He closed his eyes, reaching for the memory. And suddenly, he was there. In the car. Hands on the wheel. Mind utterly, devastatingly empty. He'd just come from the gala. Victoria on his arm, performing their perfect partnership. He'd given a speech about innovation and growth, accepted an award, smiled for cameras, and felt absolutely nothing. The realization had hit him on the drive home. This is it. This is my life. And I feel nothing. 38 years old. More money than he could spend, more power than he'd dreamed, and inside, nothing but cold, vast emptiness. The thought had formed so simply. What if I just stopped? His hands had turned the wheel. Not quite suicide, not quite accident. Just surrender. The memory released him, and Adrien gasped, his chest heaving. He hadn't been the victim of random chance. He'd been so empty, so lost, so completely alone that part of him had chosen oblivion, until Elena's voice pulled him back. 6 months of poetry and stories and simple human kindness had given him a reason to surface, to fight, to become someone worth saving. She hadn't just been his nurse, she'd been his resurrection, and he'd let Victoria drive her away. Adrien grabbed his jacket, his keys, his phone. It was past midnight. He didn't care. He had to find her. He had to tell her the truth, that remembering everything hadn't made him forget her. It had finally made him understand why she was the only memory that mattered. Elena's apartment was dark except for a single lamp in the window. Adrien stood on the street below, heart hammering, security detail waiting in the car behind him. It was 1 a.m. Insane. Inappropriate. Everything Victoria had accused him of being. He didn't care. He climbed the 3 flights, each step feeling like the distance between who he'd been and who he wanted to become. At her door, he hesitated, then knocked, soft, urgent. Silence. Then footsteps. The door opened a crack. Elena's face appeared, exhausted and beautiful and shocked. "Adrien, I remember." The words tumbled out. "I remember everything. The empire, the coldness, Victoria, my father, the accident." His voice broke. "I remember driving my car off the road because I couldn't stand how empty I felt." Elena's hand went to her mouth. "And I remember waking up," Adrien continued, "and hearing your voice. And for 6 months, you were the only thing that made sense, the only thing that felt real." He stepped closer. The memories came back, all of them. And they didn't erase you, Elena. They made me understand what I'd been missing my entire life. "Adrien, it's late. Sophia is sleeping. I know. I'm sorry. But I had to tell you." His eyes held hers, desperate and clear. "Victoria threatened you, made you stay away. I didn't know until tonight. And I need you to know that's over. She's gone. I chose... Stop. Eleanor's voice was firm but gentle. She stepped into the hallway, closing the door softly behind her. You can't do this. Do what? Show up at 1 in the morning with declarations, make grand gestures, expect me to just... She wrapped her arms around herself. You remember everything now, including who you are, a billionaire, a CEO, someone whose life is board meetings and galas and decisions that affect thousands of people. So that's not compatible with a nurse who lives in a third-floor walk-up with a 7-year-old daughter. Eleanor's eyes glistened. I knew this would happen. I knew you'd remember and realize how impossible this is. You're wrong. Adrien's voice was steady now, certain. For 38 years I built walls. I turned myself into something cold and efficient because I thought that's what strength looked like. And then I nearly killed myself because I couldn't stand the emptiness anymore. He moved closer, not touching, just present. You didn't just save my life in that hospital. You showed me what it means to be human, to care about cherry trees and terrible jokes and whether someone burns the bread. His voice softened. I remember everything now, including exactly why I need you. Not because I'm broken or confused, but because you're the only person who ever made me want to be better. Adrien, I'm not asking you to fit into my world, he said. I'm asking if I can stay in yours. Eleanor stared at him, tears streaming now. You don't know what you're saying. Your world needs you, the company, the employees. You can't just walk away. I'm not walking away. I'm restructuring. Adrien's lips curved slightly. Apparently, I'm very good at that. I've spent the last week putting systems in place, delegating, building a team that can run Hale Industries without requiring my soul as payment. That's impossible. It's necessary. I built an empire, Elena, but I forgot to build a life. He reached out slowly, giving her time to step back. She didn't. His hand cupped her face. I don't want to go back to being the man who felt nothing, who drove his car off a road because emptiness was easier than admitting he needed someone. What if it doesn't work? Elena whispered. What if 6 months from now you resent me for making your life smaller? What if I don't? Adrien countered. What if this is exactly the size life is supposed to be? Small enough to hold, real enough to feel. Elena closed her eyes, his hand warm against her cheek. Every rational part of her said this was impossible, that fairy tales didn't happen to single mothers from modest neighborhoods, that billionaires didn't change. But she'd watched him change, from ghost to human, from empty to full. Sophia asked about you every day for 3 weeks, she said quietly. Then she stopped asking, because she knew it hurt me. Adrien's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. I should have fought harder to reach you. I should have... You should come back tomorrow in daylight when she's awake. Eleanor opened her eyes. And we're going to take this slowly. No grand gestures, no rushing, just time. To see if this is real outside the intensity of hospitals and amnesia and impossible circumstances. Okay. Adrien's thumb brushed her cheek. I can do slow. I can do time. I can do anything if it means I get to stay. And if the board revolts, if your world decides you've lost your mind, then I'll know I finally found it. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. I spent 6 months in the dark, Elena. You were the light. I'm not letting that go. Not for an empire. Not for anything. They stood in the dim hallway, breathing the same air, holding the fragile hope that love might actually be enough. Inside the apartment, a small voice called out, Maman? Elena pulled back gently. I need to go. I'll come back tomorrow. After school, we'll talk properly. Adrien stepped toward the stairs, then paused. Elena, thank you. For what? For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For believing I could be better. For making me want to try. He left before she could respond, his footsteps echoing down the stairwell. Elena stood in the hallway long after he'd gone, her hand pressed to her chest where her heart was trying to remember how to trust impossible things. Inside, she found Sophia sitting up in bed, clutching her worn stuffed elephant. Was that Adrien? She asked, eyes wide. Elena sat on the edge of the bed. Yes, meu amor. Is he coming back? Elena smoothed her daughter's hair, thinking of the man who'd remembered everything and chosen them anyway, who'd looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. Yes, she whispered. I think he is. Sophia smiled, the kind of smile that believed in happy endings because she was still young enough to trust them. Good, she said simply. I missed him. I missed him too, Elena thought, even when he was just a voice in my memory. She tucked Sophia back in, kissed her forehead, and returned to her own room where sleep wouldn't come, because loving someone who'd forgotten the world to remember her felt like standing on the edge of something terrifying and beautiful, and for the first time in 6 weeks, Elena let herself believe they might actually survive the fall. The next afternoon, Adrien returned, not in a town car, on foot, carrying a bag from Senor Costa's bakery and wearing jeans that looked expensive but felt like trying. Sophia opened the door, saw him, and launched herself forward with zero hesitation. Adrien caught her, lifting her up with surprised laughter that transformed his entire face. You came back, Sophia declared. I promised, didn't I? Adults break promises sometimes. Not this one. Adrien set her down gently. Not ever again. Elena watched from the kitchen, her heart too full for words, as this man who'd ruled boardrooms sat cross-legged on her worn carpet and listened to a 7-year-old explain her complex theory about why pigeons were actually very sophisticated. He didn't check his phone once. He didn't seem to notice the apartment's modest size or the sound of neighbors through thin walls. He just was. Present. Real. Hers. And Elena understood with crystal clarity. He hadn't just remembered who he was, he'd finally discovered who he wanted to become. 1 year later. Spring came to the neighborhood like a promise kept, cherry trees blooming along the park where Sophia still fed pigeons every Sunday. Adrien stood beneath one now, watching pink petals fall like snow, remembering the first time Elena had read him Neruda's words about spring and cherry trees. He'd been in darkness then. Now he stood in light so bright it almost hurt. You're smiling again, Elena's voice came from behind him. She carried 2 paper cups of coffee from Senor Costa's, still slightly burned, still perfect. I smile a lot now, Adrien said, taking his cup. You've ruined my reputation as a terrifying CEO. Former CEO, she corrected with a smile. Co-CEO, he amended. I still go to board meetings. I just leave in time for dinner now. It had been a year of transformation. Adrien had restructured Hale Industries completely, promoted executives he'd once terrorized, delegated responsibilities he'd hoarded, turned his empire from a monument to his control into an actual company that could function without consuming him. The board had revolted at first, called him weak, compromised, said the accident had broken something fundamental. They were right. It had broken his need to prove his father wrong by becoming exactly what his father had been. Sophia's almost done with her project, Elena said, nodding toward where their daughter, because that's what she'd become, worked with fierce concentration on a sketch. Adrien had proposed 4 months ago, not with a ring that cost more than Elena's annual salary, though he'd tried, but with Sophia's approval first, a quiet question on the apartment floor, and a promise that he'd spend the rest of his life earning the gift of their ordinary, extraordinary world. The wedding had been small. The neighborhood had come. Senor Costa had made the cake. Mrs. Chen had grown flowers. It had been nothing like the society event Victoria would have orchestrated. It had been everything. "I need to tell you something," Adrien said quietly. Elena looked up, reading his face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything's—" He paused, searching for words. "Dr. Reeves called yesterday. Final evaluation. He wanted to know if I had any residual effects from the amnesia." "And?" "I told him yes. 1. Adrien turned to face her fully. "I can't remember what emptiness felt like. I try sometimes. Try to recall that drive, that moment I turned the wheel. But it's like trying to remember a nightmare after waking up. It doesn't feel real anymore." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Adrien, you asked me once if I'd resent you for making my life smaller." He took her hand. "But you didn't make it smaller. You made it the right size, big enough to matter. Small enough to hold." Sophia ran over, clutching her drawing. "Done, look!" The sketch showed their family, careful crayon lines depicting Elena, Adrien, and Sophia beneath a cherry tree. Above them, in a child's uncertain handwriting, "Family is the people who stay." Adrien knelt down, eye level with the girl who'd accepted him with the uncomplicated faith of children who know love when they see it. "It's perfect," he said, voice rough. "It's for your office," Sophia explained. "So when you're at boring meetings, you remember to come home." "I always remember," Adrien promised. "That's the one memory that never fades." That evening, after Sophia was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Adrien and Elena sat on their small balcony, the one that overlooked the street where life happened loudly and beautifully. "Do you miss it?" Elena asked. "The power, the control, the version of you that built empires." Adrien considered this. "I miss the clarity sometimes. The simplicity of seeing people as assets, decisions as calculations." He laced his fingers through hers. "But I don't miss the emptiness. I don't miss waking up and feeling nothing. And now? Now I wake up and feel everything. Terror that I'll mess this up. Joy so intense it's almost painful. Gratitude that you let me stay." He turned to her. "I built an empire, Elena, but you taught me how to build a life. Those aren't the same thing." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know what I realized? When you were in that coma, I talked to you because I thought you were alone, but I was alone too. Single mother, double shifts, no time for anything except surviving." She smiled against his shirt. "We saved each other. Best hostile takeover I ever executed." She laughed, the sound that had pulled him from darkness, and Adrien knew with absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice. Not the easy one, not the one that made sense on paper, but the one that made sense in his chest. His phone buzzed, a text from his assistant. "Board wants emergency meeting tomorrow. Stock fluctuation. They're panicking." Elena felt him tense. "You need to go." "Yes, but I'll be back by 6. I promised Sophia we'd work on her science project." He kissed Elena's temple. "The company doesn't own me anymore. You do. I don't want to own you." "Good, because I'm choosing you anyway." 2 years after that. The gallery opening was everything Adrien's old world represented: wealth, influence, people in expensive clothes pretending to understand art. But he'd insisted on coming because the featured artist was Eleanor. Her photographs lined the walls, intimate portraits of their neighborhood, the beauty in ordinary moments. Senor Costa's weathered hands shaping dough, Mrs. Chen's garden, Sophia feeding pigeons, life captured and elevated. "You're incredible," Adrien whispered, his arm around her waist as they stood before her work. "You're biased," Elena countered, but her eyes shone. "Factually accurate," he corrected. A woman approached, sleek, professional, vaguely familiar. It took Adrien a moment to place her. Victoria. She looked the same. Perfect, controlled, successful. "Adrien," she said with polite distance, "I heard you'd be here. Congratulations on—" She gestured vaguely at Elena. "Everything." "Thank you." Adrien didn't move from Elena's side. "Victoria, this is my wife, Elena. Elena Victoria." The two women assessed each other, years of history and choices made visible in a single moment. "Your photographs are remarkable," Victoria said finally. Something almost genuine flickered in her expression. "You capture something I never understood about him." "What's that?" Eleanor asked. "That he was always capable of this, of being human." Victoria's smile was complicated. "I just thought it was a weakness to overcome rather than a strength to embrace." She moved away into the crowd, leaving Adrien and Eleanor alone again. "Do you ever wonder what your life would be like if I hadn't talked to you?" Eleanor asked quietly. Adrien thought about the man in the coma, the man who'd driven his car toward oblivion, the man who'd built empires and felt nothing. "I don't wonder," he said. "I know I'd still be empty, still be driving toward edges, still be building monuments to loneliness and calling it success. That's dark. That's honest." Adrien turned her to face him. "You gave me a reason to wake up, to fight, to become someone worth the space I take up in the world. That's not just love, Eleanor. That's resurrection." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You give me too much credit." "I give you exactly enough." He wiped her tears gently. "I was in a coma for 6 months, but I'd been asleep for 38 years. You're the one who finally woke me up. 5 years after that. The cherry tree in their new backyard, modest house, bigger than the apartment but not obscene, bloomed with the same faithful rhythm it always had. Sophia was 12 now, helping her younger brother, 3-year-old Gabriel, collect fallen petals in a basket. Their laughter carried through open windows where Eleanor worked on her next photography exhibit. Adrien sat on the porch, laptop open but forgotten, watching his family with the quiet awe that had never faded. His phone rang. The company. Always the company. But now he could let it ring, could choose this moment, this absolutely ordinary moment of children and trees and wife humming in the kitchen over empire and control. "Aren't you going to answer?" Elena asked, stepping onto the porch with 2 cups of coffee. "No," Adrien said, closing the laptop. "I'm exactly where I need to be." She sat beside him, and they watched their children play beneath the cherry tree, petals falling like blessings. "Do you remember," Elena said softly, "the night you woke up? When you said my name? Every detail. I was terrified. I thought I'd created something impossible, that loving you was the worst mistake I'd ever make. And now—" Eleanor turned to him, her eyes holding the accumulated tenderness of years that had proven love wasn't a mistake. It was a choice they made every single day. "Now I know," she whispered, "that some things are worth believing in, even when they seem impossible, especially then." Adrien kissed her, soft and certain, the way he'd learned to do everything now, with presence, with purpose, with the understanding that this was what mattered, not the empire, not the achievements, just this. Cherry trees and coffee and the sound of children laughing. A wife who'd talked to him in the darkness and given him a reason to find the light. A life small enough to hold and big enough to fill him completely. He'd built kingdoms and felt nothing. Now he had a family and felt everything. And finally, after 46 years of searching in all the wrong places, Adrien Hale was home. If this story touched your heart, remember, love isn't about building empires, it's about building moments worth remembering. Like and subscribe for more stories that remind us what really matters. Because sometimes, the smallest life is the one worth waking up for.